So we're 7 months into the year and I have read 9 books. So the first book that I read this year was Open Road Summer by Emery Lord, which is really a summer contemporary, but I read it in like the first 10 days of January. I picked it up and it was really easy to get through, and I had been kind of starved for reading, because although I had been reading during September through to December, it was a lot less than I was used to, and I really had struggled to find something where I really wanted to read it brand new for the first time that didn't take me a really long time. So this was really good. It's about a girl who goes on tour with her best friend. Her best friend is a country singer and she's not really a musician, but she goes with her best friend to kind of have a girls, like no boys summer, and of course that doesn't really go to plan because it's a YA contemporary novel, so of course there's romance, and like it was just really light and fluffy and nothing too kind of strenuous or difficult or heavy. Like she does have more complicated stuff going on in her life than just like, my best friend's a country star and we're gonna go on tour together, but mostly it's that. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't give it 5 just because like it wasn't the most amazing contemporary I've ever read, but it was good and it was happy and it was a very kind of like above average but not mind-blowing. The next book that I read was Super Mutant Magic Academy by Gillian Tamaki. This was a book that I actually originally saw on Ariel's channel, and she talked about it and said how much she really liked it, and so when I got a Waterstones voucher for Christmas, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna spend it on this. And I'm really glad that I did. It took me a really long time to get through for a graphic novel, mostly because I was under the impression that it was like a cohesive story throughout, like each scene was following on from the next. It's not that at all, and I was getting really confused and frustrated by it, but it's not that, and that's why I was getting confused. It's actually more like very short comic strips on each page, and they do kind of tie in together over the course of the book, but it's not like one follows on very specifically from the next one. It's more like reading a comic strip in a newspaper every day for like a year. It was really good. I really loved these characters. They were hilarious in so many places and so realistic considering the fact that they're all mutants and studying magic. It was like very relatable in lots of different ways. Didn't give it 5 stars. Mostly because I had gotten so frustrated and it took me such a long time to get through, and there was no kind of explanation anywhere in the book about the fact that it wasn't a like cohesive story, but it was still really good. 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read I don't actually have on me. I borrowed it from a friend and it's Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This was so creepy and so beautiful at the same time. It was great. I really liked this book. Again, I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars just because there were some places where I thought they could have done with a little bit more detail in the storytelling, or like a little bit like more stories. Really, I think there were only 5 stories, but the artwork was absolutely stunning and I would definitely recommend. And if anyone knows if she's written anything else, please let me know, because I will happily read more of her like creepy stories with artwork. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. We're then on to my first 5-star novel of the year, which was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alessandz, which I'm probably saying very wrong. This book was amazing. Loved it so much. LGBT, racism, toxic masculinity, and family relations, and treating children like they're people, which, like, that's what I want to say about this book. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to tell you anything because I went into this quite not knowing anything, and I really liked that. I didn't want to know too much about who these characters were or what was going on, but it was so good. It was really well written. It was really beautifully, descriptively well written, and I loved it. And like, oh, it was so moving and I cried, but I really liked this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is possibly my favourite book of the year so far, and it's called All the Rage by Courtney Summers. This book was so great. I'm really fucking loving feminist YA, which this was so good. So this is about Romy, who is a girl in a relatively small American town, and last year she was raped by the sheriff's son. And it's not about that. It's not about that night. It's about kind of a year later. It's about how she's dealing with the town and the people in the town. The story picks up when another girl in the town goes missing, and Romy kind of has to decide whether she can deal with trying to dig everything up again. So because she's worried about this girl, and whether that's what's happening to this girl as well, and whether she needs to step in and say, or whether it's not that, and like whether her kind of speaking up is actually going to just cause more trouble. 5 out of 5 stars. Please go and read this book. I then read 2 books by the current children's laureate, which is Chris Riddell, who previously I have seen mainly as an illustrator, although I've read a couple of his like picture books, and I read 2 of his like middle grade children's novels. I read Otterline and The Yellow Cat, and I read this really quickly. I just flew through it. It was so kind of light and easy. It's about this girl Otterline, whose parents are really wealthy but who travel a lot, and they leave her alone basically with this like small hair person. I don't really know how to describe him. He's basically like 4'5" of hair, but he kind of looks after Otterline, or rather he makes sure she doesn't get into too much trouble. But it's kind of about Otterline being a detective and solving things and sticking her nose where it shouldn't be because she can. I really liked this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I then followed that on by reading one of his other series, which is Goth Girl. This took me a little bit longer to get through. I found this a little bit more frustrating, mostly because of the adult characters, which there aren't any adult characters in Otterline, so I didn't have that problem, whereas some of the grown-ups in Goth Girl irritated me a little bit, which happens quite often for me in middle grade. I find the grown-ups really annoying, mostly because when you're like 13 or under, grown-ups are really annoying. And so again, illustrations throughout. I really love the hardback, and it's got shiny purple pages, and I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. Again, quite light-hearted, nothing too heavy. Goth Girl again centers around a girl with wealthy parents doing things that she shouldn't because she kind of can, but this is much more about monsters and kind of jokey parody versions of like English literature. So there's some references to some classic literature, and mostly it's about kids solving mysteries and crimes and doing the job of grown-ups because grown-ups can't, because they suck mostly. I really like Chris Riddell, and I will definitely be reading more about Goth Girl. 4 out of 5 stars. The last 2 books that I have read so far this year are continuing on from last year when I started rereading the Mortal Instruments books. I got through the first half of the Mortal Instruments and I read the trilogy of the Infernal Devices again, and I have now read both City of Fallen Angels and City of Lost Souls again, and done the little tabby things about where I think they would kind of fit nicely into episodes. I continued doing this even though Shadowhunters has aired. I gave them 4 out of 5 stars both, this read through, mostly because there are bits in these 2 where it's a little bit slow or a little bit tedious, but I still really love them, and I'm currently reading the 6th one, so that will be the next book that I finish before the Butcher Baton starts. So those are the books that I have read so far this year. Jesus, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. And it's like 1.2 a month or something. Whoa. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.